Hi, everyone. Welcome back along to the show. Good to have you all back with me. So today I've got with me Erica Stanford. Erica is the author of Crypto Wars, Fake Deaths, Missing Billions, and Industry Disruption. I've just started reading the book and I'm very excited to get my teeth into it. Erica is also the founder of the Crypto Currier Club, which is the UK's #1 rated business and tech networking events around. She's also the editor of Crypto Currier and an associate guest lecturer on crypto at Warwick Business School. So everything you want to know about cryptocurrency, Erica knows about. Erica, welcome along to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. So, listen, crypto. Let's start right sort of at the top, big, wide sort of top first sort of question to get us going to help the audience just sort of be on the same page with us. What is crypto, and how's it used at sort of like the broadest level?
Yeah, and what is crypto is always
the
hardest possible
question
to try and answer and explain. I mean, what is crypto? Everyone's, I think, heard of Bitcoin now, and the press has gone sort of pretty big into naming some of the other cryptocurrencies, and you know, in the sort of shortest possible, sort of easiest way of trying to explain crypto, it's digital currency, it's money that's on blockchain, which what that means is it's money that's secured and sent via a distributed ledger. So you've got with most cryptocurrencies a permanent track record and constant presence showing exactly who has sent what money. And that's not necessarily to say that Jason sent X amount of Bitcoin to Erica, although that would be lovely if you do, but it shows which address has got which amount of money and who sent what to which address. So that provides just a whole new level of transparency in sending money. And also because it's digital and it's able to send money, cryptocurrency, from one party to another without having to go via a third party. And currently with the sort of traditional financial system, you've got to go via banks and traditional payment processors to make it safe to send money digitally. And that's how the sort of the financial world is set up. But that adds on costs, which we don't necessarily as a consumer pay directly, but businesses and so forth pay, and that does add on cost, and it causes delays. And it also means that you've got third parties who have a control over what money you can store and what money you can send. And you know, there's been lots of cases with PayPal, for example, just blocking transactions or blocking accounts, and likewise with banks. Or if you want to send money abroad, often there's huge fees and delays added on to that. And if you try and spend money digitally to businesses, we've often seen signs, for example, in small shops or you know or small online retailers where they say, well, to spend money digitally, to spend money via a card transaction, you've got to pay a minimum of 5 or 10 or whatever pounds, because the cost to them of accepting money via the bank transfer or via the card transaction is too high, that they otherwise wouldn't make any money. So crypto bypasses the need to rely on a third party provider, which in many cases makes it safer, but it also means that subject to the different cryptocurrency, there's some that can be sent for really micro amounts, so tiny amounts, which isn't possible via traditional currency. So it means that you can send less than 1p digitally. There was also a case recently where over $1 billion, I think it was $1 billion spent in cryptocurrency, and that only costs $7, and you know it arrives instantly and safely. So it opens up new possibilities, such as for sending money abroad. So what it really is, it's a way of sending and storing money, which doesn't rely on you having a bank account, which 2.5 billion people around the world don't have. It also doesn't rely on a third party and then depend on that third party to not block or stop your transactions or add on extra fees and delays. And it does facilitate the ability to send really micro amounts or larger amounts and send money abroad without some of the limitations that are put on us by traditional currency.
Right. And where's it kind of having the most impact at the moment? It's sort of, it seems quite technical. It seems sort of only a small, well, when you look at it, it looks like everybody's in it, but in reality, it's really only a small number of people are kind of, you know, working with crypto, trading it. You don't walk into a, you know, high street shop and spend with crypto just yet, and certainly mainstream. So where's it having the most impact? Is it in, as you say, that for the 2.5 billion people that don't have bank accounts? Is it in for a very select few of people that are trading it? in the way it needs to be traded, or is it companies, is it banks? Where's it having the most impact at the moment?
Yeah, it's good question, and big question. And I think, unfortunately, I would like to say that probably a lot of the people and companies that are getting the most impact, be that good or bad, good making money, bad losing money, is in the trading and investment side. And that's certainly the side that hits the news the most often. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I think it's a bit of a shame that you've got what is a potentially incredible technology, but it's highly volatile, and the markets in the sort of the volatile currencies do get heavily manipulated. So price goes up and down, and that means that there's arbitrage opportunities for people to make a lot of money. So yeah, in one aspect, it is traders and investors, be that everything from multi-billion-dollar companies and sort of institutional investors that have bought and holding onto Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Elon Musk and Tesla are just probably the most famous one, but there are many of those, or individuals. But then, sort of going back from that, a lot of people do use crypto for all sorts of other purposes, and we've mentioned the banked, and there's a lot of people around the world that really use crypto as a lifeline, and people in countries where due to corrupt and poorly managed central banking systems, or corrupt or unsafe governments and jurisdictions and political situations, or sanctions, or countries where there's hyperinflation, where if you keep money in your local currency, it just erodes in front of you, and it becomes worthless so quickly, that there are a lot of people that have turned to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because for all its volatility, it is seen as being safer and less volatile, or in some cases the only way of being able to send money due to sanctions, or due to borders and governments putting pressure on their citizens. So for many people around the world, it really has become a lifeline. And then you see other use cases where you've got some startups, you've even got organizations like the UN getting involved in creating digital wallets for people that haven't been able to store money digitally. So what crypto offers the ability for people, even without bank accounts, to store money digitally and save money digitally for the first time, often ever, which allows people to get a sort of a digital credit score, which allows them to be able to get loans or mortgages for the first time. And you've got groups of people who otherwise, because they don't have access to a bank, because they don't earn enough money for traditional banks to deem it economically viable or worthwhile to give them bank accounts, who would have previously had to get paid in cash. That isn't always safe. If you get paid in cash, it's often stolen, it's unsafe. You've got problems with counterfeit cash, or even cases of husbands or other people just stealing it or using it for alcohol. Whereas often the bread earners in some societies are women who can then store money digitally and save it, or put it straight to school fees or food or whatever that is. So it offers this huge amounts of potential for these sort of micropayments, or providing a sort of a digital wallet for people that don't otherwise have access to having one.
How much of that is the potential of cryptocurrency and your aspiration for where it can go versus what's really happening today? Because it sort of strikes me that there's like the today, and I'm interested in what the sort of crypto trend or the trend is right now versus where it could go. How much of it is sort of now, and how much of it is future?
Both. So that is already happening now. I mean, the trading and investment side is certainly already happening now. Yeah. But the side of the sort of digital wallet, that's already happening now. One example is a company called Plastic Bank. So they're an amazing, fantastic, I believe it's a social enterprise, but they saw the problem just of plastic bottles being just discarded into the environment and into the ocean. And there's countries around the world where waste plastic had no value. There was no incentive not to throw it away. And for people that are struggling to get by and make ends meet, there was no incentive to do anything other with your waste plastic other than just throw it away. And who cares if that goes straight into the ocean? And there'd been numerous attempts to try and incentivize people to collect the plastic, but for two reasons: either they paid them in cash, which meant that often that cash just got promptly stolen, or because the price of plastic fluctuated, people felt they were being cheated on what they were being paid. So didn't feel it was sort of worth their while to collect it, because one day they got paid X, another day Y. So Plastic Bank have done two things. They're recording the amount of plastic that they collect, and then they convert that into recycled plastic on blockchain. So you've got a proof of this plastic actually being collected from the environment and being converted into recycled plastic, as opposed to there's numerous stories of, especially in China, new plastic being created and shredded and sold as recycled plastic, because it's far cheaper more to do that, whereas it's just so much cheaper to create new plastic and shred it than it is to recycle plastic. Wow. And there's a premium. So Plastic Bank have sort of got a proof that they're creating recycled plastic, and so can sell that as a premium and pay their people more. But also they've created a digital wallet where they can pay their plastic collectors in digital currency. And that's extended. Their plastic collectors can now get loans, can get many mortgages, can get insurance, can trade that straight away for food.
It opens up a whole new bunch of opportunity.
And that's growing massively. So that's just one example. There are other examples like that. There's another example in Indonesia, where because of people that live on islands and who haven't been able to get access to traditional bank account, never get access to insurance, and especially disaster insurance, because the only way it was deemed to be able to get cash payouts to these people was to fly a helicopter in and give them physical cash, which would have cost more than the payout was worth. So there's a project being rolled out, and again, where people can get digital wallets, and now they can get disaster insurance, they can get micro insurance, and if there is a payout, that money can be sent directly to their digital wallet. So these projects are happening. Are they happening at a large enough scale or at big enough scale? No, not yet, but they're happening, and companies are doing it, and that can now grow. You asked about trends. One of the other trends that we're really seeing in the space is the rise of what are known as stable coins, which are cryptocurrencies that are, I'm going to say, in theory, asset backed by dollars or backed by other assets and so forth. And I say in theory because at the moment I'd argue that the stable coin market is no way near as developed as it needs to be, and you've got stable coins that say they're asset backed and aren't, to varying degrees of not being as asset backed as claimed to be. And it was only recently that we saw Luna, which was an algorithmic stablecoin, which works a little bit differently, but nonetheless, the theory was one of these tokens equals worth $1 and collapsed and has lost a lot of people an awful lot of money. So that market isn't anywhere near as evolved as it needs to be and anywhere near as safe as it needs to be. But what we are seeing with the rise of, especially the potential of stable asset-backed cryptocurrencies, that enables the way for people to make and receive payments around the world who may or may not have access to traditional banking, or may just prefer the stability or the safety or of cryptocurrency versus traditional banking, or may prefer the privacy or just not needing to be dependent on a third party. So that then enables a way to use cryptocurrency without having that volatility and to make payments. So we're seeing an increase in that.
That's so I understand that sounds like somewhere in between full crypto and full traditional. It's somewhere in between. So you sort of balance some of the risk of both essentially, and we'll take the best the risk of one and the benefit of the other, and bring it together.
Exactly, and that is developing, and especially now in the States, we're getting, only a few years ago it was quite unsafe to store cryptocurrency, and you mentioned that the user experience is still not as easy as it needs to be, but that is evolving really quickly, and we do now have institutional grade custody providers. You've now got onboarding platforms who do things like identity checks and know your customer to really make it as safe as it can be for people, and arguably as safe as storing money in a bank, and people would argue safer, because if you store money in a bank, that's great if you've got sort of quantities, but people have more money might not feel safe storing that, and it's only insured up to a certain amount. So there's increasing technology developments going on in the space that is making it safer for all.
Cool. I want to you sort of touched on regulation there. I want to come back to that shortly because I think the regulation or lack of is an interesting topic. But what just as you sort of talk about some examples there that are around the world, really interesting to hear what I know mainstream press on this topic really, and what you tend to read about are the sort of big winners and big losers and in this. And are we essentially just hearing about the outliers, or is this a game of, big win, big loss?
I think both. The press likes the outliers, and also people talk once if they've made a lot, and also people, once they've lost a lot, then they mention that because it's either they're in panic mode, understandably, or because they're elated. So yes, that's what people talk about, and that's what the press is. But it does, I mean, in certainly my experience of crypto, it does seem to be a little bit like that. There are some people who've done phenomenally well, and other people who had done well. And just only recently I've heard of a few people who'd done relatively well in crypto and then put seemingly the entirety or a lot of it in the Luna stablecoin and have lost a lot. Right. Or people who do well and then get hacked and lose a lot. So there are the extreme cases. I'm sure there's plenty of people, and I know quite a few of them also, who've put a little bit in and done okay and made some money, not life-changing money, but it means that they get some extra holidays, or they get a nice house or so forth, which arguably is life-changing. So I think it is, what one hears about is the extremes, and there's certainly a lot of people who've done relatively well out of it without it being sort of extreme. But also on the other side, there's an enormous amount of hacks and an enormous amount of scams in the space, and it's percentage wise of crypto, that's still quite small, but that still affects a lot of people. And I don't think those people all share publicly that they've just been hacked or that they've been a victim of a scam.
Let's move to that. So I mentioned at the start for you your book Crypto Wars, Fake Deaths, Missing Billions and Industry Disruption. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Excellent to get that. Being a fellow author, I know the joy and the effort and the pain of getting a book published. So congratulations for having that out. But
thank you.
In that book, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. I didn't quite get to finish it before we got to talk, but you talk a lot about the scams, the challenges, the sort of disaster stories from this space. So it would be good to sort of hear about some of that and some examples, but also in context of, again, is this outliers or is this what it was like in the early days and it's changing now? So what's the situation with people being nervous about scams and how real are they?
I'd say one should still be very nervous in the crypto space, and I think the more I research it and the more I look into it, the more nervous I would be. So there's a few angles. What we saw in crypto, and it's an ever evolving technology, and I think because people have made money, and it's partly people have made money, and it's new currencies that have over the years gone up tremendously in value, and for sure for all the volatility, the upside has still been a very sort of sharp upward trend if you're looking over the years. So I think to a large part there's been a bit of shiny new toy syndrome, and that with get rich quick syndrome, with opportunists taking advantage of that. So there have been enormous amounts of opportunists just taking advantage of the space, trying to get in, trying to make their buck, which has been a shame. So we saw that in the ICO period. So there was a period from mostly 2016 to 2018 when you had what was known as these ICOs, initial coin offerings, and it was people launching new cryptocurrencies. And I sound cynical now, that the concept of the ICO, it's a new way of crowdfunding, a new way of fundraising, whereby anybody can get in, anyone can put any from tiny amount into to a large amount and be part of a project. The concept of it is fantastic and liberating, and it's really a new way for startups to raise money. And some startups did do really, really well out of that and have gone on to use the money they raised to build an incredible company, and investors have done well, and all things is great. The problem is there were no barriers to anybody launching an ICO, and there were some that really did have incredible technology and incredible projects and did well out of it, and others that literally had nothing, had Finnair, had a business idea that was so awful that had they gone to traditional banks, or had they gone to traditional investors or VC, or even to friends and families, they'd have been laughed away and wouldn't have been able to raise money. But the problem, it became a bit of a bubble, quite a bubble in that era. And there were all these sort of experts in inverted commas offering their services, where they could write your white paper, create your ICO website, just a template, copy and paste, create your IO logo, list this token. So in some cases it costs as little as $100 or a couple $100 to get a sort of website template drawn up, a new logo, you get your new coin made, you get a white paper that in some cases they literally just copied and pasted and plagiarized entirely, with no originality whatever. Some of the worst ones would put up a website and would make claims about who they had on their team, or in some cases just put cartoon figures. Oh, we've got Bob, Sue, Joe, Tim, whatever on our ICO, and likelihood that they're actually real people, probably zero. So some of them really had absolutely nothing of any value. You sort of plagiarized content saying of what they were going to do, which most of them didn't end up doing. And there were some joke ones that still raised money. I mean, that's what I remember, that said it was going to sell banana chips on blockchain. And there's no reason to have banana chips on blockchain unless it's a sort of proof of provenance thing. But what they did to raise money, they had to create a new cryptocurrency out of thin air, because that's what they sold to raise money, and it was a way of raising money without having to create a good company or give away a part of that company. So to then have a banana chips ICO, they'd have to create a new cryptocurrency and say, well, if you want to buy these banana chips, you have to buy this cryptocurrency to buy these banana chips. I'm sorry, if you want to buy banana chips, you just go on whatever your local shop is, or Amazon, or to your local shop, and you press buy now and you buy your banana chips. There's no need or value in having a new cryptocurrency to buy banana chips, and nobody's going to use that. So that's just one example that has stuck with me. But it just became a lot of opportunities, just thinking, I'm going to launch an ICO because that means I'll be able to create a new cryptocurrency which costs me basically nothing, and it will raise money. And years later, the statistics are that 98% of them crashed spectacularly, either because they were scams, or just because they were just hopeless failed ideas, or because the market turned on them. So regardless of sort of circumstance, almost 98% of them lost their investors' money, and 2% probably did phenomenally well. So that goes to show, and we're getting a bit of that now with I'd say some of the prices that some of the NFTs and non-fungible tokens are going for. We're seeing silly multiple millions of pounds being paid for digital JPEGs that you can't really do anything with other than look at online. So I think we're seeing that to a degree, and that there have been a whole bunch of Ponzi schemes and actual scams run by sort of criminal organizations and professional mafia groups in some case taking advantage of the space. So that is a problem. But the scams, I think whilst it's continuing to be a problem, the advantage you've got with crypto is it's more easy to trace than other money. So cash, than cash. So I think yes, there are awful crypto scams and a lot of people lose money to them, but the scams, and especially since lockdown, in every industry, in constantly on social media platforms, on Facebook Marketplace. My parents get a scam phone call pretty much every day trying to con them out of something. The scam industry has grown enormously. The difference with crypto is, yes, whilst they're very bad and lose a lot of people a lot of money, they can be traced a lot easier. And now you've got this whole rising crypto analytics platforms and technologies that can trace them. So
is there more prosecution? I mean, you might not know this, but is there more prosecutions because of that then? And the people doing the scams getting caught more regularly?
It's starting to happen. It is starting to happen. And because what you've got now is these crypto analytics platforms that can see where the money has gone. And, often they can trace who that's ended up with. So what you do now have is it's possible, if you're working with the right lawyers or with the right sort of crypto analytics companies, that they can trace the money. And there has been numerous cases where they've identified that, well, your stolen money has ended up at this exchange, and they can now get court orders to freeze that money, or even just cooperate with the exchange to show that, we can prove that this money is stolen, and then they can freeze it, and then that money can be gotten back. So that is happening. And I haven't mentioned it sort of on my LinkedIn, I've probably mentioned to you, but I work at the main law firm in the space, CMS, the biggest law firm, I believe, in Europe, but have the most active crypto fintech practice. And we're seeing more and more cases of this, and they're now working with law enforcement, with the exchanges, putting together a sort of a group to be able to help prevent it, to be able to get money back from scams more quickly, and even working on some class action. So that is happening more and more.
So that's kind of out the private sector, really. It sounds like a coming together in that example to try and support, stop negative things happening and support people that are impacted by it. But if I think about the sort of first half of our discussion and this half, you paint this really great picture about the opportunity that crypto and blockchain, which we didn't define actually, but the platform that crypto trades on, and the opportunity that gives, and opening up banking to people and currency to people that couldn't ordinarily get it, and all those opportunities with getting insurance that you couldn't get before. Brilliant. Like, absolutely. Like, why would you say no? Then you got the other side of this, which is, scams and Ponzi schemes and get rich quick and huge volatility and massive winners, massive losers. Where does that come? How do we bridge that gap? Is there is regulation the answer to that? And if or part of the picture, and if so, where's that up to? And is there anything else that's happening that kind of sort of tries to sort of bring us closer to the opportunity and further away from the downsides?
So a few answers to that question. I think the first one I would say would be education of people, and there are warning flags to the scams, and I appreciate it is easy to fall for them, and plenty of intelligent people have fallen for them, but also there are warning flags that one can learn, one can see, one can know what to look out for, and also where one stores crypto. A lot of the people that end up losing money is because they've stored crypto in the wrong place, on a dubious exchange, either an exchange that sometimes is the one that's a scam, and they then steal money and go thank you very much, or because they haven't taken the correct security measures, and then they get hacked. So there are ways of storing crypto that are considered to be institutionally safe, where your crypto is sort of offline and unhackable. And then there's ways of storing crypto that are high risk by any definition of the word. So I'd say largely it's education. That what all of the scams have in common, other than the hacks, it is about persuading people, tricking people into parting with their money. So they use all of these different facades. You'll get rich quick, you'll get extra coins, you'll store your money more safely, we'll trade this for you and you'll get money. Whatever the claims are, all of the tricks go down to persuading people to send their crypto. So just by learning more, understanding how the scams work, understanding how the technology works, one can prevent oneself from falling for a lot of the scams and a lot of the problems. So I would say that would be the first thing. And, I'd argue that if anyone is looking at getting into crypto, fantastic thing to learn about. And I'd say probably essential for understanding finance in the near future. But I would argue that understanding how the scams work, and understanding how custody works, and just understanding the problems around that would prepare oneself and would prevent a lot of the problems. Regulation is kicking in. The UK has been notoriously slow and at doing anything, and as a result, statistics are that 90% of companies have now left the UK, and only now that the government is realizing how much they've lost out on tax and power wise,
90% of crypto based companies.
Apparently that's a statistic I've heard, and certainly the majority of companies you speak to have given up on being able to be based in the UK and are applying to be based elsewhere. And I understand from the regulator's point of view, they're trying to keep people safe by not sort of giving a green tick to potentially bad things. I think another way of looking at it is when you see how many scams there are and how many bad companies there are, the companies that are applying to get regulated probably aren't the worst ones. I think there could be something where, even if they could go, well, we've checked this company and, they're 95% good and we're working with them to make sure that they're good. So they've got, a green tick with, dotted line or, something.
Some warning flags.
To show exactly, as opposed to the ones that are downright scam. The problems are that the downright scams, because they're not concerned with staying legal, they make all of the claims and the promises and just lie blatantly in some cases that the regulated companies can't get away with. So I think that's part of the problem. I think it's less though. We had this conversation yesterday. We were at a panel alongside people in law enforcement talking about fin crime, and it seems that it's less of a problem with the law. That the laws aren't the problem. It's more about, when you look at things like law enforcement, the police, and the sort of the crime prevention agency, they've got the technology how to stop the scams and the problems. That they've got access to the crypto analytics tools. The problem is they just don't have enough resources. The ideal scenario, one could have 100 times more police people, but I think that would be the case for a lot of scenarios in life.
Yeah. Well, I think, combination of those things. Certainly that education point is a good one. And as you say, it's just like anything else, anything new, people need to understand it. And it's easy to go, well, I've heard of some big winners here, so I'm going to jump in. And also this is about investments, right? And there's other ways to manage your investments than jump onto the sort of newest coin that exists. Just if you think about, sort of mainstream companies, corporate companies, I don't know, brands, Nike and Unilever and retailer down the road. How do they, how do they prepare for this? How do they prepare for a world of crypto when it's sort of more mainstream? Is there things they should be doing now to sort of get ahead? Because I think that's a relevant question to sort of a broad audience. But how do those dots connect from today to what it will be like?
It's a really relevant question, and it's so topical. You ask that now. So a few years ago, before lockdown, when we were hosting the events, we often had people coming along from traditional banks and the traditional payment providers and the sort of the traditional finance companies, but they weren't coming along in any official company format. They were either coming along as individuals, just thinking, I need to learn more about this, I want to understand more about this, or they were coming along in an official format, but really being like, we don't understand this, we're coming along to learn and just to meet some people and understand more of the space. But our company couldn't possibly have anything to do with crypto. And now, partly through my work at CMS, the law firm, and partly through the community, there have been all sorts of companies, traditional, the largest banks predominantly coming forward, but other sort of, big global brands coming forward and being basically saying, like, we understand now, we need to learn about this. In some cases, we've lost customers as a result of our negative crypto policy. And we can see that those customers have gone to the crypto sort of friendly providers. In some cases, they've seen that quite clearly. So that they're seeing that they have to get on board to it and offer some form of crypto product. So they're coming to us in at the moment it's in a really basic, can you give us a crypto 101 overview, which we're doing. And then also it's understanding the ecosystem, and it's understanding sort of how the whole things work. And we've touched on, there are safe institutional grade crypto custody providers, digital asset providers. There's now law firms that understand how it works and can check sort of the contracts and can check that things are set up safely. There are now even some sort of institutional level crypto trading firms and crypto storage firms and so forth. So there's a lot that is safer than it was a few years ago, enormously. So that the user experience is getting better, and you've now got the crypto analytics providers and the sort of that can combine with know your customer check. So not only can they now see who is sending crypto, but the crypto analytics tools are incredibly powerful. They can go back numerous stages, as far back as you want, to see the source of funds, for example. So one of the fears is, well, isn't this coming straight from dark web, or isn't this coming straight from drug money or North Korea or so forth? Well, It might be, but the analytics tools will show that exactly, because they've got, you know, the software, and they know who the bad actors are, and they can, you know, raise pretty accurately to show that, oh, this crypto is clean, you know, and has been clean going back 10 or whatever transactions, or no, this crypto is coming straight from a scam. So there are ways to make things a lot safer. You've also now got digital asset insurance providers. So it's I think partly they're in the learning stage to see what are the options, how can they catch up. There's a realization that they now need to do something in crypto, because otherwise they'll get left behind or just lose customers. But then it's really understanding the market and how to be safe within that. So I'd argue that it's not impossible to be safe in crypto. It's just understanding how to, and working with the right providers and platforms in that.
And I think my last thought on this is this the end of I don't know if you call it modern currency, traditional currency, legacy currency, you know,
no.
Pounds and dollars, and, you know, is it the end of that, and does it all move digital, or are we? Is there always going to be? It's just another currency that exists.
Yeah, I think when you hear from governments and when you hear from the payment providers, they want to get rid of physical cash for numerous reasons, and that's not related to crypto in any way.
That's just moving digital.
They wanted to go digital and move away from physical cash. Good, you know, good and bad reasons. Physical cash, there's huge problems with it being counterfeit and copied, and, you know, also uses a lot of energy. That's a few things. You know, if you and I wanted to buy drugs from each other, sending Bitcoin to each other would be the stupidest possible way of doing that, because, you know, albeit a lot of crime is still committed that way, it's traceable, and, you know, then there can be a track showing, well, you bought this Bitcoin at whatever time, you sent it to me, and, you know, that's very traceable. So if you and I wanted to sell drugs to each other, our best, safest way would be to meet up in person and swap cash, physical cash, for drugs. You know, making the point. So you know, there's a huge drive to get away from cash. I think what the scarier side of that is, it's also sort of government control on that. Governments can't control cash. If you've got cash, you've got to do with safety, unless you're in a country that wipes by hyperinflation. Whereas if things are digital, that can be controlled a lot more. So the trend we're seeing now is governments going towards what is called CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, where they're using sort of the technology and power of sort of cryptocurrency and blockchain, whereby you can send money, you know, cheaply and instantly and so forth. You've got all of that, and one of the other features of cryptocurrency is that you can set rules attached to it. So you can say, well, this money can go here but not there, or this money can only go here subject to blah 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 conditions, and so off. And the Chinese government, sort of to go into sort of fear factor mode, the Chinese government have been well ahead of the rest of the world in doing this. They've been working on their own electronic payment sort of digital currency now for 7 or 8 years, and it's very advanced, and it's attached to a social credit score, and, you know, you have to have, people can only pay using a certain app, and that's the only way you can pay. You can't store cash or anything. So if you've got a low social credit score, you can't book a train ticket, you can't get your kid into a certain school, you have to pay higher interest rates. They're trying to make it, if you've got a low score, that you're basically trapped a prisoner in your home and can't do anything, you know, which is, there's
a Black Mirror episode on that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's totally scary, because things that determine your score are things like arguably shouldn't determine your ability to make payments, such as your ethnicity, your religion, your sexuality, your who you vote for, if you're a political journalist and say, you know, things against the government, what you buy, all of these factors that one could argue, / I would argue, aren't fair or good to one's ability to make a payment. But the technology allows that. So you've got all of these governments going into launching CBDCs because they want basically full control over citizens' money and the full data. And I'd argue, in the hands of the wrong government, that's terrifying. And one should run away screaming to a different country.
Well, it's ending on a cheery note then.
Sorry.
But no, it's fascinating. There's so much to it. It's so new. I know it's been a number of years that it's sort of been growing, but it's still so new. There's so much education. There's so much fear and uncertainty and doubt in sort of mainstream, I think, of this. And yeah, I think if we can wrap our arms around it and look after it, and then all the opportunity you talked about at the start, I think would be a great thing. So, Erica, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thanks for having me.
I knew very little about this space. This has helped to just open a little, and I look forward to finishing your book as well. So,
cool. Well, thank you for buying it.
No worries, and thanks a lot for coming on the show. Hope you enjoyed being here. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. And thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. Something slightly different for this podcast, but I think very relevant for all sort of leaders and businesses around the world. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks.